I hate you. The words tore through our Charleston home like thunder on a summer night, sharp and unmistakable. I stood frozen in the doorway of Maya's bedroom, my hand still gripping the doorknob, feeling as though the air had been sucked from my lungs. For a moment, time seemed to stop. The hum of the air conditioning, the distant sound of cars passing on our tree-lined street, even my own heartbeat. Everything faded into silence except for those 3 words echoing in my mind. Maya stood across the room, her 17-year-old face twisted with anger, and tears streaming down her cheeks. Her school backpack lay abandoned on the floor, textbooks spilled across the hardwood like casualties of war. Her chest heaved with emotion, her hands clenched into fists at her sides. She looked at me with eyes that held something I'd never seen before, not just teenage rebellion, but genuine, raw fury. I'm Diana Richardson. I've been a nurse at Charleston Medical Center for 23 years. I've held the hands of dying patients, comforted grieving families, and maintained composure through medical emergencies that would break most people. But nothing, absolutely nothing, had prepared me for this moment. Nothing prepares you for the day your daughter, your only child, the little girl who once refused to sleep without holding your hand, tells you she hates you. Maya, I began, my voice barely above a whisper, but she cut me off immediately. Don't, she said, her voice trembling with emotion. Just don't, Mom. You always do this. You always think you know what's best for me, but you don't. You don't understand anything about my life. The argument had started over something that seemed so simple. Her request to attend a late-night party at her friend Jessica's house. Jessica, whose parents I'd never met. Jessica, whose address Maya had been vague about. Jessica, who apparently threw parties when her parents were out of town. As a single mother who'd raised Maya alone since her father left when she was 3, I'd learned to trust my instincts, and every instinct in my body screamed that this party was trouble. I already told you no, I said, trying to keep my voice steady. It's a school night, and you have that chemistry test on Friday that you've been worried about. Plus, I don't know Jessica's parents, and... See? Maya interrupted, her voice rising again. That's exactly what I'm talking about. You don't trust me. I'm 17 years old, Mom. 17. But you still treat me like I'm a child. I stepped further into her room, careful to avoid the scattered books. The walls were covered with posters of her favorite artists, photographs of her and her friends from the school's photography club, and acceptance letters from 3 universities, including her top choice, Howard University in Washington, D.C. My brilliant daughter, who'd maintained a 3.8 GPA while juggling advanced placement classes, photography club, and volunteering at the community center. She was so close to everything we'd worked for, everything we'd sacrificed for. I do trust you, Maya, I said, choosing my words carefully. But trust doesn't mean letting you put yourself in potentially dangerous situations. I'm your mother. It's my job to protect you. Protect me? Maya's laugh was bitter, harsh. You're suffocating me, Mom. All my friends are going, everyone. But not me, because Diana Richardson says no. Do you know how embarrassing it is? Do you know what they say about me at school? The pain in her voice cut deeper than her anger. I could see it now. This wasn't just about tonight's party. This was about months, maybe years of accumulated frustration. Since she'd turned 16, I'd noticed the change. The eye rolls, the heavy sighs, the way she'd retreat to her room immediately after dinner. The teenage years they warn you about, except somehow I'd convinced myself we'd skip that phase. We'd always been close, Maya and I. We were a team. We had to be. I don't care what anyone says, I replied, feeling my own frustration building. And neither should you. Those kids don't pay our bills. They won't be there when things go wrong. I'm the one who'll be at the hospital if something happens. I'm the one who'll have to pick up the pieces. Nothing's going to happen, Maya shouted, her voice cracking. Why do you always assume the worst? Why can't you just let me live my life? Why can't you just let me be normal? Normal? I felt something snap inside me. You want to know about Normal, Maya? Normal is the 15-year-old I treated last month in the ER who drank too much at a party and nearly died from alcohol poisoning. Normal is the 16-year-old who got in a car with a drunk driver and spent 3 weeks in intensive care. Normal is the 17-year-old whose parents trusted her judgment, and now she's— "Stop it!" Maya screamed, covering her ears. "Stop trying to scare me with your hospital stories. I'm not those kids. Why can't you see that? Why can't you see me?" There it was, the heart of it. Why can't you see me? I opened my mouth to respond, to tell her that I did see her, that I saw her every single day, that everything I did was because I saw her and loved her more than life itself. But the words stuck in my throat. "You know what?" Maya continued, her voice dropping to something cold and controlled that frightened me more than her shouting. "Dad was right to leave. I finally get it. You're impossible to live with. You're controlling and paranoid, and you make everything about fear. I hate living like this. I hate these rules. I hate this house." She paused, and in that pause, I could see her gathering courage for what came next. I wanted to stop her. I wanted to cover my ears like she had. I wanted to rewind time by just 5 minutes, 10 minutes, an hour. Back to before this conversation started. Back to when she was little and I could fix everything with a hug and a cookie. "I hate you." The words came out quieter than her earlier shouting, but they hit with infinitely more force. She said them while looking directly into my eyes, making sure I felt every syllable. The room fell silent. Outside, I could hear a dog barking somewhere down the street, a car door slamming, life continuing as normal while mine seemed to be crumbling. Maya's face immediately showed regret. I saw it flash across her features, shock at her own words, fear at what she'd unleashed. But teenagers live in pride, and she couldn't take it back. Instead, she turned away from me, facing her window that looked out over our small backyard. I stood there for what felt like an eternity, but was probably only seconds. My mind raced through possible responses. Part of me wanted to match her anger, to shout back, to tell her she was grounded for a month. Another part wanted to cry, to beg her to take it back, to explain that those words would haunt me forever. But the nurse in me, the part that had learned to stay calm in chaos, took over. "Okay," I said quietly. "Just one word." Then I turned and walked out of her room, closing the door gently behind me. I made it to my own bedroom before the tears came. I sat on the edge of my bed, the one I'd bought 15 years ago when we first moved into this house, and I cried. Not loud, dramatic sobs, but quiet tears that streamed down my face while I tried to process what had just happened. My phone buzzed. A text from my colleague Jennifer. "Still on for coffee Sunday?" I stared at it, unable to comprehend responding to something so normal when my world felt so broken. I looked at the framed photo on my nightstand. Maya at her 8th grade graduation, her smile so wide and genuine, her arm around my shoulders. "Best mom ever," she'd written on the frame with a silver marker. When had that girl disappeared? When had I stopped being enough? The house was too quiet. I waited for Maya to come to her door, to apologize, to cry, and tell me she didn't mean it, but her door stayed closed. Eventually, I heard her music start playing, not loud, just present, a barrier of sound between us. I lay back on my bed, staring at the ceiling fan making its slow rotations, and wondered, where did I go wrong? Had I been too strict, not strict enough? Was I really controlling, as she said? Was I suffocating her with my protectiveness? But then I thought about Sarah Martinez, a colleague whose daughter had gone to just one party and ended up making choices that derailed her college plans. I thought about Michael Chen, whose son had promised he wouldn't drink, and ended up in my emergency room. I wasn't being paranoid. I was being a responsible parent in a world full of very real dangers. Wasn't I? The question haunted me as the evening light faded through my bedroom window, as the house grew darker, as the distance between my daughter and me seemed to grow wider with every passing minute. I didn't know it then, but that night would change everything. Not because of the words we'd said, but because of what I would do the next day. The next morning would bring a lesson neither of us expected, a meal that would teach more than any lecture, a mother's wisdom wrapped in an act of love that looked, on the surface, like surrender. But first we had to survive this night, this terrible, silent, broken night where the words, "I hate you," hung in the air like smoke, impossible to clear away, impossible to ignore. The clock read 11:47 p.m. when I finally gave up on sleep. I'd been lying in the darkness of my bedroom for hours, watching the red numbers change with agonizing slowness, listening to the sounds of my house settling, and replaying every moment of the argument with Maya. Each word she'd spoken felt like a knife that kept twisting deeper with every memory. "I hate you." I sat up in bed, my heart heavy with a weight I'd never felt before. Not even when Marcus left. Not even during those first terrifying months as a single mother, wondering how I'd managed to pay bills and raise a child alone. This was different. This was the fear that I'd lost my daughter not to distance or circumstance, but to my own mistakes. The hallway was dark, except for the small nightlight near the bathroom, the same one I'd plugged in when Maya was 3 and afraid of the dark. I passed her closed door on my way downstairs, pausing for just a moment. No light showed beneath it. She was either asleep or pretending to be. Either way, the silence between us felt like an ocean. In the kitchen, I filled the kettle with water and set it on the stove. My grandmother's china cabinet stood in the corner, filled with delicate teacups and saucers that had been in our family for 3 generations. I selected one carefully, a cream-colored cup with tiny roses painted on the rim. My grandmother had given it to me the day Maya was born. "This cup," she'd said, holding it with arthritic but gentle hands, "has served tea to 4 generations of Richardson women. Your great-great-grandmother drank from it on the day she found out she was pregnant. Your great-grandmother used it when she needed to think through difficult decisions. Your mother held it when she was nervous about becoming a grandmother. And now, Diana, you'll use it when you need wisdom to raise your daughter." I thought she was being sentimental at the time. Now, sitting alone in my kitchen at nearly midnight, I understood completely. The kettle whistled softly, and I poured the hot water over a chamomile tea bag, watching the water slowly change color. Steam rose in delicate spirals, and I wrapped my hands around the warm cup, seeking comfort. My mind drifted back to a different night, 15 years ago. Maya had been 2 years old, maybe 3. She'd woken up from a nightmare, crying hysterically. I'd rushed to her room and found her standing in her crib, tears streaming down her little face, reaching for me with desperate arms. "Mama! Mama! Monster!" I picked her up, held her close, felt her tiny heart racing against my chest. "Shh, baby. There's no monster. Mama's here. You're safe." "Promise?" She'd whimpered, her voice muffled against my shoulder. "I promise. I'll always keep you safe." That promise had defined my entire approach to parenting. Keep her safe. Protect her from monsters, real and imagined, from bad decisions, from dangerous situations, from a world that could be cruel and unforgiving. But somewhere along the way, had my protection become a prison? I took a sip of tea, letting the warmth spread through me. The house creaked, old wood settling in the cool night air. Through the kitchen window I could see our backyard bathed in moonlight. The swing set I'd bought when Maya was 5 still stood there, though she hadn't used it in years. I should have taken it down, I thought, but I couldn't bring myself to do it. It felt like erasing her childhood, acknowledging that she was truly growing up and away from me. My phone lit up on the counter. A notification from the hospital's scheduling app reminding me of tomorrow's shift. I'd be working the day shift, 7 a.m. to 3 p.m. That meant I'd be home by 3:30, giving me time to prepare dinner. But dinner felt like such a normal concept right now, and nothing about today felt normal. I opened my Photos app, something I did when I needed comfort. Thousands of pictures of Maya stared back at me. Maya as a baby, her first smile. Maya's first day of kindergarten, gap-toothed and excited. Maya at her first photography exhibit at school, standing proudly next to her black and white portrait series. Maya at Christmas last year, laughing at something I'd said while we decorated cookies. When did that laughing girl become the angry young woman who hated me? A memory surfaced, sharp and clear. Maya was 12. We'd been at the grocery store, and she'd begged me for a particular cereal, some sugary brand all her friends ate. I'd said no, explaining that we needed to make healthier choices. She'd been disappointed but accepted it. As we walked to the car, she'd slipped her hand into mine. "Mom?" she'd said, looking up at me with those big, trusting eyes. "Yes, baby. Even when you say no to stuff I want, I know it's because you love me." I'd almost cried right there in the parking lot. Instead, I'd squeezed her hand and said, "That's exactly right, sweetheart. That's exactly right." Now, 5 years later, that same love looked like control to her. That same protection felt like suffocation. I stood up and walked to the refrigerator, opening it without really seeing the contents. Milk, eggs, leftover chicken, vegetables, Maya's favorite yogurt that I bought every week, even though it cost more than the store brand. Evidence of my love in every shelf, but she couldn't see it. She only saw the boundaries, the rules, the no's. My colleague Jennifer's words from last week echoed in my mind. We'd been having coffee during our break, and she'd mentioned her own teenage daughter. "Samantha wants to go to some concert 3 hours away with her friends," Jennifer had said, stirring sugar into her coffee. "No parents, just a carload of 16-year-olds. I said absolutely not, and she acted like I'd ruined her entire life. "What did you do?" I'd asked. Jennifer had smiled, a tired but knowing smile. I let her be angry. That's what my mother told me. Sometimes the price of being a good parent is being temporarily hated by your child. They don't have the perspective we have. They can't see the dangers we see. Our job isn't to be their friend right now. It's to get them to adulthood safely. It had seemed so clear then, so obvious. But now, sitting alone with the echo of Maya's words, I wondered, was Jennifer right? Or were we both just scared mothers holding on too tight? I closed the refrigerator and returned to the table with my tea. The house was so quiet I could hear the clock ticking in the living room, an old anniversary clock under a glass dome that had belonged to my parents. What would my mother have done? I tried to imagine her in my situation, but the truth was, I'd been an easy teenager, bookish, quiet, more interested in nursing school applications than parties. I'd never given my parents the kind of worry that Maya gave me now. But I remembered something else. I was 19 in my first year of nursing school, and I'd met Marcus. Charming, handsome Marcus with his easy smile and big dreams. My mother hadn't liked him from the start. "That boy is all talk and no substance," she'd warned me. "He'll charm you and leave you." I'd been furious. "You don't know him. You don't understand our relationship." She'd looked at me with sad, knowing eyes and said, "You're right, Diana. I don't. But I know life, and I know people, and I know what happens when someone loves the idea of something more than the reality of it." I'd stopped speaking to her for 2 months. 2 whole months of stubborn silence because I couldn't stand that she didn't support my relationship. Then Marcus left, just like she'd predicted. Left me pregnant and alone, and my mother had held me while I cried, never once saying, "I told you so," just being there with love and support. Later, years later, I'd apologized for those 2 months of silence. I was so stupid, Mom. You were right, and I was too proud to see it. She'd taken my hand in hers and said something I never forgot. Diana, those 2 months broke my heart, but I'd go through them again if it meant keeping you safe. Sometimes love looks like standing firm even when it costs you. That's what mothers do. Was that what I was doing now? Standing firm even when it cost me? Or was I making the same mistake my mother had made, assuming I knew better, that my experience trumped Maya's autonomy? The difference was, my mother had been right about Marcus, but was I right about this party, about my rules, about everything? I finished my tea and rinsed the delicate cup carefully, drying it with a soft cloth before returning it to the cabinet. As I did, something caught my eye. A small piece of paper stuck to the refrigerator with a magnet, a drawing Maya had made when she was 6. Stick figures of the 2 of us holding hands under a rainbow. Me and Mommy, best friends forever, written in uneven letters. Best friends forever. When had that changed? The answer came quietly, painfully. It hadn't changed. I still felt that way about her. But she was 17 now, and 17-year-olds weren't supposed to be best friends with their mothers. They were supposed to be pushing away, testing boundaries, becoming their own people. I knew this. I'd learned it in every parenting book I'd read, every article I'd saved. Adolescence was about separation, about individuation. It was healthy, normal, necessary. But knowing something intellectually and feeling it emotionally were 2 completely different things. I turned off the kitchen light and stood in the darkness, looking up at the ceiling toward where Maya's room was on the 2nd floor. She was up there, maybe sleeping, maybe lying awake like I had been. Either way, there was distance between us that felt impossible to bridge. Tomorrow I'd have to face her at breakfast. We'd have to navigate around those words, "I hate you," that hung in the air like ghosts. We'd have to figure out how to be mother and daughter in the aftermath of this rupture. But as I stood there in my dark kitchen, something began to form in my mind. Not a solution exactly, but an idea. A way to teach the lesson I needed her to learn, without lecturing, without fighting, without making things worse. My grandmother's voice came back to me, something she'd said many times. "Diana, sometimes the best lessons aren't taught with words. Sometimes you have to show people what you mean." Yes, I thought. Tomorrow, I wouldn't try to explain. I wouldn't defend my rules or justify my decisions. Tomorrow, I would show her. I would make her lunch just like she'd asked weeks ago. Complete freedom, her choice of everything. No restrictions, no guidance, no mother's wisdom telling her what was good for her. And then I'd teach her why those restrictions existed, not with anger, not with punishment, but with love that looked like letting her see for herself. The plan formed slowly, carefully in my mind. By the time I finally climbed the stairs back to my bedroom, I knew exactly what I needed to do. I paused outside Maya's door one more time, still silent, still dark, still that ocean of distance between us. "I love you, baby," I whispered to the closed door. "Even when you hate me, I love you. And tomorrow, I'm going to show you why." The words disappeared into the silence, but I felt better for saying them. Tomorrow would be difficult. Tomorrow would require strength and wisdom and more love than I'd ever had to show before. But I was her mother, and mothers do what needs to be done, even when it breaks their hearts, especially then. Morning came too quickly and too slowly at the same time. I woke at 5:30 a.m., earlier than my alarm, with Maya's words still echoing in my mind. The house was dark and quiet, that particular stillness that exists just before dawn. I lay there for a moment, gathering my courage for the day ahead, then rose and began my morning routine. Shower, uniform, coffee. the familiar rituals of a nurse preparing for her shift. But today felt different. Today, I had a plan. At 6:15, I heard Maya's alarm go off upstairs. Then silence. She'd hit snooze, something she did every morning. I smiled despite everything. Some things never changed. I prepared breakfast as I always did: scrambled eggs, whole wheat toast, fresh fruit, and orange juice. Maya's usual morning meal, the one I'd been making for her since middle school. Nutritious, balanced, exactly what a growing teenager needed to start her day. At 6:40, Maya appeared in the kitchen doorway. She looked exhausted. Dark circles under her eyes suggested she'd slept as poorly as I had. Her hair was pulled into a messy bun, and she wore her favorite oversized sweatshirt, the Howard University one she'd gotten when we visited the campus last spring. She didn't meet my eyes. "Good morning," I said softly, placing her plate on the table. "Morning," she mumbled, sliding into her chair. The single word felt like a victory after last night's war. We ate in silence. Not the comfortable silence of two people who understand each other, but the heavy, awkward silence of two people afraid to speak. I watched her from the corner of my eye as she pushed her eggs around her plate, taking small bites without enthusiasm. The kitchen clock ticked loudly. Outside, birds were beginning their morning songs. Life continued around us while we sat frozen in the aftermath of our fight. "I have to leave for my shift in 10 minutes, I said finally. "Your lunch is in the refrigerator." Maya looked up, surprised. I usually handed her the brown bag as she left for school, but today I had different plans. "Okay," she said carefully, suspicion creeping into her voice. I stood and rinsed my plate in the sink, taking my time, choosing my next words carefully. This was it, the moment to set my plan in motion. "Maya," I said, turning to face her. She looked at me warily, probably expecting another lecture, another argument. "I thought about what you said last night, about me being controlling, about not trusting you." She stiffened, her hands gripping her fork tighter. "And I've decided you're right." Her eyes widened. Whatever she'd expected, it wasn't this. "You're 17 years old, almost an adult. In a few months, you'll be at Howard, making all your own decisions without me there to guide you. So today, I'm going to give you what you want." I walked to the refrigerator and pulled out a large paper bag, much bigger than her usual lunch bag. "Today's lunch is completely your choice. No restrictions, no rules, no mother telling you what's good for you. Everything you could possibly want is in this bag. Candy, chips, soda, cookies, chocolate, all the things I usually say no to. It's all yours." I placed the bag on the counter. Maya stared at it like it might be a trap. "There's enough in there for you and your friends if you want to share. Consider it my way of saying, I'm sorry for being too controlling. You wanted freedom to make your own choices, so here it is." Maya's expression shifted from suspicion to confusion to cautious excitement. "Seriously?" "Seriously," I said, grabbing my purse and car keys. "Enjoy your lunch, sweetheart. I'll see you when I get home from my shift." I kissed the top of her head. She didn't pull away, and headed for the door. As I left, I glanced back to see Maya approaching the bag with tentative curiosity, like a kid on Christmas morning. The drive to Charleston Medical Center usually took 20 minutes. Today, I barely noticed the familiar route. My mind was on Maya and the lesson waiting to unfold. My shift passed in the usual rhythm of hospital work. Checking vitals, administering medications, comforting patients, coordinating with doctors. But I kept checking my phone during breaks, half expecting a text from Maya. Nothing came. At noon, when I knew Maya would be at lunch, I couldn't help but wonder, had she opened the bag? What had she thought? Jennifer found me in the break room at 1 o'clock. "You look distracted," she said, sitting beside me with her own lunch. "Everything okay?" I hesitated, then told her everything. The fight, the words, my plan for the lunch. Jennifer listened carefully, her expression thoughtful. When I finished, she was quiet for a moment. "That's either brilliant or risky," she finally said. "What if she doesn't get it?" "Then I'll have failed," I admitted. "But I had to try something. Lectures weren't working. Arguments weren't working. Maybe experience will." "Sometimes," Jennifer said slowly, "the best lessons are the ones we teach ourselves." At Maya's high school, lunch period began at 11:45 a.m. Maya had carried the large paper bag to school with a mixture of excitement and residual suspicion. All morning, she'd wondered what had happened to her mother. Diana Richardson didn't just give in. She didn't surrender. Something felt off, but Maya was too intrigued to question it deeply. She met her friends at their usual table in the cafeteria. Jasmine, Tyler, and Marcus, her core group since freshman year. "What's in the huge bag?" Jasmine asked immediately, her eyes wide. Maya opened it slowly, like revealing treasure. Inside was every teenager's dream lunch. Family-sized bags of Doritos and Cheetos, full-size candy bars, chocolate chip cookies, cans of Coca-Cola, gummy bears, chocolate-covered pretzels, packages of Twinkies, and more. "Oh my God," Tyler breathed. "Your mom bought you all this?" "She said I could make my own choices," Maya said, still slightly dazed. "No restrictions, no rules." "Dude, your mom is awesome!" Marcus exclaimed. "My mom would never." They spread the feast across the table. Other students noticed and gathered around, impressed by the display. Maya felt a surge of pride. Finally, her mother had listened. Finally, she was being treated like the almost adult she was. They dove in. Maya opened a bag of Doritos, cracking open a Coke. The fizzy sweetness was instant satisfaction after years of her mother's healthy choices only rule. She bit into a candy bar, the chocolate melting on her tongue. Freedom tasted sweet. Jasmine grabbed the cookies. Tyler demolished half a bag of Cheetos. Marcus claimed the gummy bears. They laughed, joked, shared with friends passing by. Maya felt light, vindicated. See? Nothing bad happened. Her mother worried for nothing. By 12:15, Maya had consumed half a bag of Doritos, a full Coke, 2 candy bars, a handful of chocolate-covered pretzels, 3 cookies, and some gummy bears. By 12:30, her stomach started to hurt. Not much at first. Just a slight unease, a heaviness. She ignored it, taking another sip of Coke, but the feeling grew. By 12:45, when the lunch period ended, Maya felt genuinely sick. The grease from the chips sat heavy in her stomach. The sugar from the candy made her feel jittery and nauseous at the same time. Her mouth tasted like chemicals and artificial flavoring. Her head had started to ache. That particular throb that comes from too much processed food and caffeine on an empty stomach. She gathered the remains of the feast. Surprisingly, they'd barely made a dent in it, and threw most of it away. The sight of the food now made her stomach turn. "You okay?" Jasmine asked, noticing Maya's pale face. "I don't feel great," Maya admitted. "Maybe you ate too fast," Tyler suggested. But Maya knew it wasn't just the speed. It was everything. The combination, the excess, the complete lack of anything nutritious or balanced. Her afternoon classes were difficult. She couldn't concentrate in AP English. Her stomach continued to churn through chemistry. By the time she reached photography, her favorite class, she felt so sick that she asked to visit the nurse's office. The school nurse, Mrs. Patterson, took one look at Maya and asked, "What did you eat for lunch?" Maya explained, shame creeping into her voice as she listed item after item. Mrs. Patterson's expression was kind but knowing. "And how do you usually eat lunch?" "My mom, she makes me healthy lunches. Vegetables, lean protein, fruit, water." "Let me guess," Mrs. Patterson said gently. "You thought her rules were too strict?" Maya nodded miserably. Honey, your body is telling you something right now. It's telling you that what tastes good in the moment isn't always what's good for you. Your mother's lunches gave you sustained energy, proper nutrition, stable blood sugar. This lunch? She gestured at Maya's green-tinged face. This is what happens when we ignore what our bodies need in favor of what we want. Maya lay on the nurse's office cot for the remaining hour of school, her stomach slowly settling but her mind racing. This wasn't random. Her mother had known exactly what would happen. This wasn't surrender. This was a lesson. I arrived home at 3:30 p.m., just as Maya's school bus pulled up to our stop. I watched from the kitchen window as she walked up our driveway, moving slowly, her backpack hanging from one shoulder. Even from a distance, I could see she looked unwell. She came through the front door quietly, dropping her bag in the hallway. "Hi, honey," I called from the kitchen. "How was school? How was lunch?" Maya appeared in the doorway. She looked at me, and I saw it all in her eyes. Understanding, embarrassment, resignation, and something else. Respect. "You knew," she said simply. "You knew exactly what would happen." I set down the vegetables I'd been chopping for dinner. A healthy stir-fry with chicken, broccoli, bell peppers, and brown rice. "I had an idea," I admitted. Maya pulled out a chair and sat heavily. "I felt sick all afternoon. Mrs. Patterson said it was because my body wasn't used to that kind of food. Because you've been feeding me healthy meals my whole life." "Yes," I said gently. "That was the lesson, wasn't it? The lunch?" I put down my knife and turned to face her fully. "Maya, when you were little, you didn't understand why I wouldn't let you touch the hot stove. It looked harmless to you. You wanted to touch it. But I said no because I could see the danger you couldn't. As you grew up, the dangers changed, but the principle stayed the same." Maya's eyes filled with tears. "I'm sorry for what I said last night." "I know, baby. I don't actually hate you. I was just angry and frustrated and—" "I know," I repeated, moving to sit beside her. "And I know I can be overprotective. I know my rules feel restrictive, but every rule, every no, every boundary, they exist because I can see things you can't see yet. Not because you're not smart or capable, but because I have perspective you'll only gain with time." "The lunch," Maya said, wiping her eyes. "It wasn't about control. It was about consequences I couldn't see until I experienced them." "Exactly. Just like that party you wanted to attend. I'm not saying no to punish you or control you. I'm saying no because I can see the potential consequences, the risks, the dangers, the possibilities that seem distant until they're immediate." Maya was quiet for a long moment. Then she said, "But Mom, I still need to learn to make my own choices, even if they're mistakes sometimes." I took her hand in mine. "You're absolutely right. And that's the hardest part of being a parent, knowing when to protect and when to let go. I'm not perfect at it. Today was my way of showing you why I set boundaries, but you're right that I also need to give you more room to grow." "So what do?" Maya asked. "We find balance," I said. "We talk instead of yelling. You trust that my rules come from love, not control. And I trust that you're growing into a wise, capable young woman who will learn to see the dangers for herself." Maya nodded slowly. "Can we start with that party? Jessica's party?" I took a deep breath. "Tell me everything about it. Not defensively, but honestly. Who's going, where it is, what the plans are. Let's discuss it like adults and make a decision together." For the next hour we talked. Really talked. Maya explained that Jessica's older sister would be there supervising, that it was at their house, and Jessica's parents would be home, that she understood why I worried and she'd keep her phone on and check in every hour. "I still want to say no," I admitted. "My instinct is to protect you from everything, but I also recognize that you need to start navigating the world with your own judgment." "So is that a yes?" Maya asked hopefully. It's a conditional yes. You check in every hour. You're home by 11. No drinking, no getting in cars with anyone who has been drinking. And if anything feels wrong, you call me immediately. No questions asked. Deal, Maya said, her smile genuine for the first time since last night. As we prepared dinner together, Maya helping chop vegetables, both of us moving around the kitchen in comfortable synchronization, I realized something important. The lunch had taught Maya about consequences and wisdom. But this conversation had taught us both about trust, communication, and the delicate dance of letting go while still holding on. Mom? Maya said as we set the table. Yes? Thank you. For the lesson, for understanding, for being the mom who cares enough to say no even when it's hard. I pulled her into a hug, holding my daughter, my almost adult daughter, close. That's what mothers do, sweetheart. We love you enough to be temporarily hated. We teach lessons that hurt us more than they hurt you. We hold on and let go at the same time. I love you, Maya whispered. I love you too, baby. Always. Even when you hate me. She laughed and the sound filled our kitchen, like light breaking through clouds. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, new conflicts, new moments of tension as Maya continued growing toward independence, and I continued learning to let her. But tonight we had this: understanding, forgiveness, and the knowledge that love, real, deep, protective love, sometimes looks like a lunch bag full of junk food and the wisdom to let your child learn for themselves. Sometimes the best lessons aren't taught with words. Sometimes you have to show them. Friday arrived with the kind of nervous energy that fills a house when something significant is about to happen. Maya had been talking about Jessica's party all week, but in a different way than before. Now, instead of defensive arguments, we had actual conversations. She told me who would be there. She showed me Jessica's address on her phone. She even offered to introduce me to Jessica's older sister, Alyssa, who would be supervising. You don't have to if it makes you uncomfortable, Maya had said Wednesday night while we folded laundry together, a chore we turned into talking time. I'd like to meet her, I'd replied. Not because I don't trust you, but because it helps me feel more comfortable letting you go. And I had met Alyssa, a responsible 22-year-old graduate student who'd assured me that their parents would be home and that she took her supervision duties seriously. It had helped, not completely. I don't think any parent ever feels completely comfortable with these situations, but enough. Now it was Friday evening, and Maya stood in front of her mirror, changing outfits for the third time. Mom, she called down the stairs. Can you help me decide? I climbed the stairs to her room, smiling at the familiar teenage crisis. She stood between two outfits laid out on her bed. One a casual dress with sneakers, the other jeans and a nice top. What's the vibe? I asked, sitting on her bed. I don't know. I want to look nice, but not like I'm trying too hard. Jessica said it's casual, but you know how that goes. Someone always shows up super dressed up and makes everyone else feel underdressed. I studied both options. The jeans and top. You look confident in that combination, and confidence is always the best outfit. Maya smiled, pulling on the jeans. Thanks, Mom. As she got ready, applying light makeup and adjusting her hair, I found myself memorizing the moment. My daughter, 17 years old, preparing for a party. A normal teenage milestone that had become weighted with so much more meaning because of everything we'd been through this week. Maya, I said softly, I need you to promise me something. She turned from the mirror, mascara wand in hand. What? Promise me that if anything feels wrong tonight, anything at all, you'll trust that feeling and call me. No matter what time it is, no matter if your friends tease you, your safety and comfort matter more than anything else. Maya set down the mascara and came to sit beside me on the bed. I promise, Mom. I really do understand now. What you said about seeing dangers I can't see yet. I get it, and I'll be careful. I know you will, I said, taking her hand, because you're smart and strong and you have good judgment. I'm not worried about your decision-making. I'm just worried because I'm your mother and that's what mothers do. Even when their daughters hate them? Maya asked, her voice teasing but with an undertone of regret. Especially then, I replied, squeezing her hand. At 7:30, Jessica's sister Alyssa pulled up in front of our house. I walked Maya to the door, my heart doing that painful squeeze that happens when you watch your child walk toward independence. Phone charged? I asked. Yes. Promise to text me every hour. Yes, Mom. Know that I love you and I'm proud of you. Maya turned back, her eyes soft. Yes, I love you too. I watched her walk to the car, watched her laugh at something Alyssa said, watched them drive away. Then I closed the door and stood in the sudden silence of my empty house, feeling that particular loneliness that comes with letting go. I tried to keep myself busy. I cleaned the kitchen that didn't need cleaning. I organized the pantry. I started a load of laundry. I turned on the television and couldn't tell you a single thing that played on the screen. At 8:30, my phone buzzed. Just got here. Everyone's really nice. Alyssa is keeping a close eye on things. Love you. I smiled at the screen, typing back, have fun, sweetheart. Stay safe. At 9:30, another text. Playing board games right now, can you believe it? Actual board games. Jessica's family is really cool. Everything's good. Board games. I let out a breath I didn't know I'd been holding. At 10:30, the text came. Some people brought drinks. I said no, thank you. Alyssa made them leave the drinks in their cars. She's really taking this seriously, heading home at 11 like promised. I read that text 3 times, pride swelling in my chest. She'd faced the choice and made the right one. Not because I was there enforcing rules, but because she'd learned to see the wisdom in them herself. At 11:15, headlights swept across our living room windows. I was at the door before Maya could use her key. She looked happy, genuinely happy. Her eyes were bright, her smile real, and I could see the joy of someone who'd had a good time without compromising herself. How was it? I asked, trying to keep my voice casual instead of revealing the hours of worry I'd just endured. It was actually really fun, Maya said, dropping her bag by the door and following me to the kitchen where I'd prepared hot chocolate, our traditional post-event tradition since she was small. The first hour was kind of awkward because everyone was just standing around, but then Jessica's sister suggested board games and it turned into this whole competitive tournament thing. It was hilarious. She sat at the kitchen table, wrapping her hands around her mug. And Mom, something happened that I need to tell you about. My heart jumped, but I kept my voice steady. Okay. Around 9, some of the guys who'd been drinking tried to convince me and Jasmine to try some. They weren't pushy or anything, but they were like, come on, just one drink, don't be boring. And I remembered what you said about peer pressure and how people make it seem like no big deal. I sat down across from her, listening intently. But I also remembered the lunch, Maya continued. How I thought I wanted all that junk food, how it seemed harmless, and how sick I felt afterward. And I realized this was the same thing. Something that seems fun in the moment but has consequences I can't see until they happen. What did you do? I asked softly. I said no, not in a judgmental way, just a simple, no thanks, I'm good. And you know what? Nobody cared. Jasmine said no too, and the guys just shrugged and moved on. It wasn't this huge dramatic thing like I always thought it would be. I felt tears prick my eyes. I'm so proud of you, Maya. I wanted to call you right then and tell you, she said, her own eyes getting misty, because I finally understood what you've been trying to teach me all these years. It's not about you not trusting me. It's about you teaching me to trust myself, to recognize danger, to make good choices even when they're not easy. I reached across the table and took her hand. That's exactly right, sweetheart. And tonight, you proved that you can do that. You made the right choice because you wanted to, not because I was standing over your shoulder enforcing it. We sat in comfortable silence for a moment, drinking our hot chocolate, and I realized something profound. This week had changed both of us. Maya had learned about wisdom and consequences, but I had learned about trust and letting go. Mom, Maya said quietly, can I ask you something? Anything. When you were my age, did you always make the right choices? I laughed, a real laugh. Oh, sweetheart, no. I made plenty of mistakes. I dated your father, didn't I? Maya smiled. Grandma didn't approve of him, did she? Not at all, and I was furious with her for it. I thought she was being controlling and judgmental and didn't understand real love. I paused, remembering. Then he left, and I realized she'd been trying to protect me from heartbreak. She could see what I couldn't see. But you don't regret him, do you? I mean, you wouldn't have me if... I could never regret anything that brought you into my life, I interrupted firmly. But I do wish I'd listened more to the people who loved me and saw things more clearly than I did at the time. That's what I'm trying to give you, the benefit of my experience without having to go through all the pain I went through. Maya nodded slowly. I get that now. I really do. But Mom, you also have to let me make some mistakes. Not dangerous ones, but small ones. Ones I can learn from. You're right, I admitted. And that's what I'm learning too. How to step back. How to guide without controlling. How to protect without suffocating. We're both learning, Maya said, with a wisdom beyond her years. Yes, we are. We finished our hot chocolate, and I walked Maya upstairs, something I hadn't done in years. At her door, she turned and hugged me, a real hug, long and tight. Thank you for the lunch lesson, she whispered. I know it probably hurt you to let me feel sick like that, but it taught me more than 100 lectures ever could. Sometimes, I said, stroking her hair, like I did when she was little. The best lessons are the ones we have to learn ourselves. I just provided the opportunity. You're a good mom, Maya said. Even when I say I hate you, you're still a good mom. And you're a good daughter, I replied. Even when you drive me crazy with worry. She laughed, and we said goodnight, and I went back downstairs to my quiet house. But it felt different now, not lonely, peaceful. I picked up my phone and texted Jennifer. She made good choices tonight, all on her own. I think we're going to be okay. Jennifer replied immediately, Of course you are. You gave her roots and wings. Now she's learning to fly. Roots and wings. Yes, that was exactly right. I walked to the kitchen and washed our hot chocolate mugs, placing them carefully in the dish drainer. As I did, I noticed the moon through the window, full and bright, illuminating our backyard, where that old swing set still stood. I'd been thinking about taking it down, but now I decided to keep it. Not because Maya would use it again, but because it was a reminder. A reminder of the journey we'd taken together, from the little girl who needed me for everything to the young woman who was learning to need me in different ways. Parenting, I realized, wasn't about holding on or letting go. It was about both at the same time. It was about teaching lessons through love, even when those lessons were hard. It was about setting boundaries while allowing growth. It was about being hated temporarily in order to be appreciated permanently. I thought about that lunch I'd packed, that bag full of junk food that had taught Maya more than any lecture ever could. I thought about how sometimes the best gift you can give someone is the freedom to make a mistake in a safe environment. How sometimes love looks like stepping back and letting natural consequences do the teaching. And I thought about the words that had started this whole journey. I hate you. Those words had broken my heart. But they'd also opened a door to a deeper understanding between Maya and me. They'd forced us to communicate instead of just coexisting. They'd challenged me to be a better parent, and her to be a more thoughtful daughter. Sometimes the worst moments lead to the best growth. I turned off the kitchen light and headed upstairs. As I passed Maya's room, I could see light under her door. She was probably texting her friends about the party, reliving the good moments, solidifying friendships. I paused, remembering her as a toddler, as a child, as the teenager she was now. All those versions of her were still in there somewhere. All those moments we'd shared still part of our story. "Good night, baby," I whispered to her closed door. "I love you, always." From inside, faintly, I heard her call back, "Love you too, Mom, good night." And in those simple words, I heard everything: forgiveness, understanding, love, respect, and the promise of a future where we'd continue to navigate this complicated, beautiful journey together. Because that's what families do. They hurt each other sometimes. They misunderstand each other. They say things they don't mean, but they also forgive. They learn, they grow, and they love each other through it all.